Good evening and welcome to tonight's concert by guitarists Candice Mowbray and Joao Figueiroa. I'm Danielle Cumming, Artistic Director of Marlow Guitar International. We begin this evening with an interview of Candice and Joao with Tom Cole. Tom is a very well-known voice for guitar on Washington, D.C. radio. And in fact, he was a guitar student of John Marlow, after whom our series is named. It was always one of my great pleasures when we were having in-person concerts to take our visiting artists down to K Street to the Pacifica studio for WPFW to have them interviewed live to air by Tom Cole. They were always amazed when I would say to them that the interview might last an hour, and they couldn't believe that there could possibly be that much to talk about. But Tom is so much fun and so knowledgeable about the guitar that at the end they would always say to me, "That went by fast." Here is Tom Cole in conversation with Candice and Joao. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Candice Mowbray.
Hi, my name is Joao Figueiroa.
And I'm Tom Cole, host of G Strings, a program of stringed instrument music, primarily guitar music, heard every Sunday on WPFW 89.3 FM. And this evening, we'll be hearing these two fine guitarists in a program that ranges from the 16th century vihuela music of Luis de Narvaez through Edith Piaf to the contemporary music of former Washington area musician Michael DeLalla. I'm sure you're more interested in hearing about what the musicians have to say than me. So let's start with Candice. You're from the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, right?
Yes, I live in Western Maryland, actually. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about your career, how you started playing guitar, and
Sure. I got into guitar because I really liked rock music, actually, and started out playing electric guitar. And then as I got older and was headed to college, I spent time around some people who were playing classical guitar and jazz. And so when I started my undergraduate program, I really was studying both styles of music and gigging a little bit, playing jazz and little local combos and that kind of thing. But then I really took to playing classical guitar. I loved the independence of it. I loved the music and the challenge. And after several years of study, then opted to just really focus my time and energy. And so now I identify as a classical guitar player, but a lot of my friends are jazz musicians, and I do try to touch into their world a little bit as much as I am capable of doing.
How do you think that influences the way you approach classical guitar music?
I think the looking for repertoire, I tend to play a lot of modern music. I mean, I like 19th century and Baroque and all kinds of music, really, but I do have a tendency to often play arrangements of jazz tunes, things like Manhar de Carnaval, or even the Edith Piaf, La Vie en Rose. So I have a tendency, repertoire-wise, to look for these really melodic and gorgeous pieces of music, gorgeous melodies, and I can improvise. I wouldn't brag about it, but I can improvise. I'm not afraid to do that. So I think that influences sometimes the arranging process, actually, or coming up with cadenzas, or just looking at the score a little differently with a bit of flexibility. And I enjoy playing with my friends who are jazz musicians, so it causes me to have to stretch a little bit and at least consider some things from those toolboxes.
That's very cool. Music, I mean, Bach improvised, Renaissance music certainly allowed for improvisation. So tell us a little bit about how you put together the program for this evening.
A number of the pieces on tonight's program are from my CD Reverie, and they're just favorite pieces. La Vie en Rose is just one of my favorite melodies. I love the song. I love the style of music, and I was so happy to come across an arrangement that's very nice by Jean-Marie Raymond. And then I love French music in general, and so during the pandemic and the lockdown, I had a little online activity that I started where I arranged the A section of an Eric Satie piece called Je te veux, and I just did the A section and invited anybody who wanted to play along with me to create a part, improvise a part, or sing or dance or read poetry. And all of the above happened. And so it turned into a very surprising, very positive little social media activity. But I love the piece, and I wanted to play the piece in its entirety. So about 2 months ago, I really actively started working on arranging the whole piece for solo performance. And so that's on the program with another Eric Satie piece that I arranged. And but in general, they're just favorite pieces.
Were those two Satie pieces originally for solo piano?
The Gymnopédie, yes, is a piano piece. Je t'ai vu is interesting because it's a song, but he also had a solo piano version, and the form is a little different for both versions. But there are lyrics. I mean, it's an actual song, and it's a catchy melody. I mean, if you hear it, it will stick with you, for the rest of the day.
Cool. You also play a piece, or you're also going to play a piece by Ida Presti. And one of the things that you've done in recent years is present lectures, a program about some of the great female classical guitarists of the 20th century and even before, of the 19th century. Tell us a little bit about Miss Presti, who was a virtuoso, certainly. And you also have a piece on the program by her late husband, Alexander Lukoya.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ida Presti, to use Larry Schnitzler's words, another Marlow personality, she was a force of nature. And she's just one of, there's so many great heroes of the guitar, male and female. I, of course, have written a lot about the female people in guitar history. And her, Maria Luisa Anito, Louise Walker, those three women of the 20th century had been a focus of my study and almost like a hobby, like collecting. I know it's my profession, but it was something that goes on just behind the scenes. Anytime I could collect a piece of sheet music or a book or an article, anything about those women, I'd collect it through, at least 15 years now of doing that. And when I was in school, I wanted to write a dissertation about all three, but my advisors really had me focus in. So I focused in on writing not only about Ida Presti, but specifically about her as a solo player, because a lot more was known about her as a duo partner. So that's been an ongoing point of study and point of performance for me, is to share her music as best as I can and her legacy as best as I can. And there's lots of other people who do that, Eleftheria Koltzia, Alice Arts, and there's an album by a guitarist of all of her solo works now. And so thankfully that legacy is being pushed on and shared. But I still play, include in pretty much all my programs at least one piece by her. And then I love the pairing of her Don's Rhythmic along with, so she dedicated that to LaGoya, her husband, and LaGoya dedicated to her this gorgeous piece called Reverie, which is probably, you know, in my top 5 favorite classical guitar pieces. So, yeah.
So you'll be playing both of those, and as well as a piece by Michael Delala, who also went to and taught at Shenandoah Conservatory, where you went and taught as well.
Yeah, so Michael is my good friend, I'm very pleased to say. And I met him because he was my guitar ensemble director when I was a master's student. And then later, I was on his record label for my first CD, Falling Mountain Music, and he recorded that. He ushered me into the whole recording world. And we've just stayed friends, thankfully, you know, friends and colleagues through the year to bounce ideas off of each other. And I just wanted to share the funny story of how part of this piece that I'm going to play tonight. Michael is a great composer. And he has these really interesting pieces, a setting of Round Midnight, you know, that's really, really cool. But some of the pieces are challenging. And I just one day, because we're friends and we can be very candid with each other, I said, Michael, I just want something easy to play. Why don't more composers write easy pieces? And so he wrote a set of fairly easy pieces. And I really took to playing this one called A Quiet Night on the Roaring Fork. I play it all the time. It's one of my favorite just go-to things to play with the guitar. And I'm really happy I was able to program it for tonight's concert.
Very cool. And as you said, these pieces are just some of your favorites. In presenting a recital for a virtual audience only, are there any special considerations, anything you took into mind in putting the program together?
Well, it was, in a way, a fun thing to do because I'm sharing the concert with Joao, who's an extraordinary guitar player, and he's going to play these pieces that are just outstanding. And so I had to consider, you know, his pieces and my pieces as a whole program. And so that was, you know, an interesting challenge, but in a good way. Because if I were giving an entire hour recital, I would have these, you know, contemporary pieces that I'm playing, but then I would probably balance it with some significant 19th century work by Soar. Well, Joao wanted to program a significant 19th century work. So I was able to kind of stay out of that way. And, you know, he's going to handle that beautifully. And so there was that consideration. But then also because it's you know, we're not sitting in a, what's the right word for it? In a transitory experience. You know, we're not together in the moment fleets where, you know, where you're living in the moment. And when you live in the moment, I think you're more willing to take some risks and some chances. So I'm, although the Je t'ai vu is a brand new arrangement, the other pieces are things that I have played, you know, in concert before. So I wanted to make sure I had a balance where I wasn't doing for myself and my, you know, good experience with doing an online concert. I wanted to make sure I had played some things that I had in fact played before. But to contradict myself, the Je t'ai vu, this is the first time I've ever played that for a public audience. So some, you know, balance the risk. Cool.
Very cool. Well, we look forward to hearing both of those, both the new and the familiar. Joao, let's talk a little bit about you and your background. You're from Brazil originally. Where were you born?
From the deep south, Brazil. So I was born in a city called Salvador, northeast of the country in Bahia. That's the state name. And I actually grew up in a family. My father, he was what we call chorão. I mean, he was a flute player and played choros in the rodas de choro. for forever. And I grew up in that type of environment, listening Brazilian music every weekend. And every weekend, the main family party, the main family activity or event was going to these house parties with musicians and their families, and just play. My father was playing music and I was playing with the other kids, but the background always was Brazilian music. And that was actually, I was very fortunate because that was my life growing up. I don't remember when I wasn't not going to those parties, in Brazil back then. And I still know all the musicians. I still remember all of them. I am in contact with them because, after so many years, the connection grew so strong that you just know everyone in town. And then one of the things also that was very common to happen in those parties was like any new musicians who would arrive in town. There was a good connection, good network to go, because you never know, and you can meet different types of musicians and people. And that's where I actually met my teacher, my main teacher in Brazil, who actually was worked with me since from I was 12 years old until I was finished college. He was actually my professor who I graduated with. And he had just come from Germany. He was studying with Elliot Fisk. He just had graduated with Elliot Fisk, and he was just a new guy who just came in town and just wanted to play. And he fortunately got a job in our university, my back home university, my alma mater university. And that's how everything started, because I was just astonished of, after seeing him playing, and really made a difference. When after seeing him playing, I felt like, the guitar was amazing and I just wanted to learn more. And by the time that I was 14 years old, I knew that I wanted to go to college to be a musician. I was playing guitars younger than that before I met him, but wasn't like as formally, and I wasn't as serious. But when I actually started to work with him, that's when everything started to be more and more serious to me.
So when you started to play, were you playing choro, which is like Brazilian popular music? It's not quite folk music. It's all acoustic instruments, but
exactly. Yeah.
Is that what you were playing?
So that was initially the direction that I was going, in one way, because there wasn't like a classical guitar teacher at that level in my hometown. So I just didn't know more about classical guitar. The classical guitar that I knew was the classical guitar that's played in choro, right? And which I grew up with that type of music, but it wasn't like didn't make like an impact, to be honest, on me. Maybe because I was so used to, maybe because there was the dad side of the whole relationship with music that he was, So although I like it, and I still liked the music, I really loved the music, but didn't move as much as when I heard barrios being played in the guitar, when I heard Villa-Lobos and so many important composers, and that's when actually things moved to a different direction. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the program you'll be playing tonight. You're going to start with some very interesting music. I want you to tell us about the composer, Luis de Narvaez, and the instrument for which he composed, and how this music was arranged for classical guitar, because it was written for the vihuela.
Exactly. So the first two pieces that I will be playing in the program is by Luis de Narvaez. First one, the first piece, it's actually based on the famous, piece, Miller's Regret, which is Thousand Regrets. That's maybe the best translation to English, which is deep, sad. It's and it was a repertoire, a music that actually traveled all over Europe. It's one of those big hits, let's say, and this piece was actually an arrangement. So the Million Regrets actually was transcribed and rearranged to many different types of ensembles throughout Europe. And many different composers did that. And this one particular is by Luis de Narvaez. He rearranged that, for the vihuela de mano. And it's very interesting because you can go and check the whole tablature, the original tablature, how it was written, and it's pretty, because of the instrument, is actually pretty straightforward how to sound and to be transcribed to the guitar, to the classical guitar. I mean, there is a little bit of intonation differences because of how the vihuela is actually tuned in relation to the guitar, but once you have some sort of ability on how to read the tablature, it's actually quite guitaristic, those pieces, and sounds terrific, sounds beautiful. So, and then the second one is Diferencias on El Conde Claros, which was also a very popular and famous piece, song across Europe, especially in Spain. And that's much more like an upbeat type of repertoire of music. So I found it was a nice thing to do, bringing some contrast between the two. Those pieces are found on the Seis Livros de Delfín by Luis de Narvaez, which it's a composite, it's a collection of pieces written for voice and vihuela, some variations, some differencias like the one that I'll be playing, and also some of the arrangements like the Mille Regrets, the Canção de Imperador.
So you mentioned tablature, which is different from musical notation in that instead of the lines of traditional music notation, the lines in tablature are actually the strings of the guitar or lute. And this is how music for those instruments was written back in the day.
Exactly. Yes, and it's pretty amazing actually, because the set of information that you get from tablature is actually different from the regular type of notation. So when you start studying them, it's really amazing how much you can find out on directions on interpretation you can take, especially because it's such a early music, a period that we don't have much of that records, we don't have CDs and don't have them. So everything is based on pure research of musicologists that you go and research to know more about and have like a glimpse of how the music was played back then, or the intentions of the composer and things like that. But rhythm, for instance, it's one of those points, because the detailed how the rhythm is detailed on a tablature is completely different on how it is in standard notation. So then it becomes also a matter of researching and trying to understand what would be the best direction for how to make the interpretations.
That's fascinating, because as you said, we don't really know much about the intentions of composers from that far in the past. Do we know a little bit more about the 18th century composer that you're going to play, Wertmüller? about how he wanted his music performed?
I think so. I think that type of music, it's a little bit more clear. One, because of the structure, it's much more simple than when you think about Baroque music, especially. Baroque music, it's when everything, about understanding the composer's direction became even more difficult, even more than the Renaissance, in my opinion. But and during the classical period, someone like Werthmüller, I think the music became more simple. So I think the options that you have are less. You have less options in the sense of how your performing style and the direction that you want to do it, things, during the classical period. So, but Werthmüller, it's almost like unknown composer. If you go to the Grove Dictionary of Music, you don't find any indications about Franz Werthmüller, which is quite interesting. And this piece was manuscript that was found, and this guitar player called Timon Hopstock made the edition. He edited, and was manuscript that likely was a transcription for a guitar. So we don't know at this point actually what original piece that was written for.
Wow.
But one thing it's clear is that wasn't written for guitar, because it's very awkward, like some of the positions. Yeah. And you realize that as you play. But we know that likely wasn't written for the guitar. I mean, the second movement specifically, it's written in B flat, and then there's a modulation to D flat, which are terrible keys for guitar to be played. Yeah, and but sounds beautiful. And that actually was one of the reasons that I really wanted to play this piece, was because you have those standard composers that we love so much for the classical guitar, Saul, Giuliani, Costi, and so on, but the language that Werthmüller brings with this piece is completely different. And the second movement, he's actually much more looking forward in history than actually classical. It's much more like a romantic movement, within a classical piece structure. I mean, classical because the first and the last movement is pretty classical in its form. A major with the way that it's segmented, the ritornello form. The last movement is a rondeau, and the first movement is A major, second movement in B flat, third movement in A major back again, which is very much like Haydn, format. So you do have this really strong classical structure. But at the same time, the second movement, you have a lot of twos against threes. You have the key that sounds completely unique for the guitar. So it's a completely different flavor for the classical repertoire that we are used so much with our traditional composers.
And then you're going to round out the program with music from two Brazilian guitarists and composers, Ginga and Marco Pereira. Tell us a little bit about them and about the pieces that you chose to play.
So about Ginga, there is a funny story, because I remember from those roda de choros back when I was very young, maybe 10 and 11, but for somehow this kind of got stuck with me, because I remember that one day, one of those meetings, Giga was there, and everybody was like, Ginga is here, Ginga is coming, and he'll be here, and he came and played. And I remember that, but it was just like beautiful, his playing. And at the same time, I was so young that I still remember, I'm amazed actually that I remember that experience about having Ginga in one of those parties. Keep in mind that we did that like every weekend. So, but So the first piece that I will be playing, it's an arrangement in this setting. It's called Senhorinha by Ginga. And this actually was a piece written during the 80s, was actually quite famous in one of the Brazilian soap operas. The lyrics, it's beautiful. It's about, it's a description about his daughter. His daughter was quite sick, and she was improving, and that's kind of the whole context, which actually has it's to some degree hits home with me, because I had a similar situation. My daughter was sick for 3 years. I mean,
Wow.
Pretty sick, and when I read the lyrics, and I remember about this piece. This piece was in my back of my mind for many years, and I completely forgot. And suddenly I was just going on YouTube, and suddenly I found this piece, and I said, I have to play this piece. It really hits home, and it's just beautiful. It's just very, very lyrical, and the poem of the piece itself, of the song, is just it's undescribable. And like many Brazilian songs, right, because of the Portuguese language and all that. So, and then the last piece that we'll be playing, it's by Marco Pereira, called Bate Coxa. Marco, when my first trip, when I was coming to the US to study for my master's degree, Marco, I was in an airplane. My first leg, I was in an airplane, and I sit down with Marco on my side.
Wow.
Just by, and then I was like, and introduced myself. And I realized that later on that was a flight that was with a whole bunch of actually Brazilian musicians, because there was this big party, and one of this big event happened, and it was nice. So that was actually the last time that I met Marco in all these years of even traveling Brazil, playing Brazil, and all that. So he's my friend now on Facebook, though. And but beautiful, great composer, great player, a lot of swing, a lot of energy. It's one of those musicians that it's really, really an experience to watch and play. And then this piece is called Bate Coxa. It's written based on a rhythm that's come from the part of the Brazil that I come from, which is called Baião. So it's really like a dance that we hear every time during the summer, winter there. Very common, like people get together on those big parties in the cities, and they play like very close to each other, to the point that they are hitting their thighs. So Bate Coxa means, hitting thighs or slapping thighs, because of the characteristics of the dance itself. But it's beautiful, and upbeat, happy, and I felt like was a good way to ending the concert.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing all of these pieces, both those from Candice and yours, especially the Wertmüller, who, as you indicated, I'd never heard of before, really. One thing to conclude that people should know is that in addition to being an accomplished performer, you're also going to be editing this and putting the whole program together. So you should get a nod for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's part of the whole process, and I'm actually happy. It's actually quite exciting to get this done.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you both for taking the time to talk to us about the music that you'll be playing tonight and about yourselves. And we look forward very much to hearing the program.
Yes. Thank you, Tom, for doing this.
Thank you, Tom.
You bet.
Hello again, I'm Danielle Cumming, Artistic Director of Marlow Guitar International. Tonight is a very special concert. We are celebrating the conclusion of a successful season that this time last year looked very much in doubt. We had to adapt very quickly to all the technical challenges of an online series, and we're just so touched and delighted that you came along with us and adapted to all those challenges too. Thank you for being here. All the concerts this year were by performers who were near and dear, and that is doubly true tonight. Our performers are Marlow's own executive director, Joao Figueiroa, and Candice Mowbray, the Marlow's education and grants specialist. I'm honored to say that they are my colleagues and my friends, because as you will hear, they are both inspired performers and tremendous artists. Please don't forget to click on the second link that will enable you to join the Zoom call that will let you speak with Candice and Joao at the conclusion of tonight's concert. Thank you. Enjoy.
So I'm really thrilled to be playing for the Johnny Marlow Guitar Series, and to be ending a really successful year of wonderful concerts. The next piece is very special to me. It's a short work by a very good friend of mine by the name of Michael DeLola. And Michael was a student of John Marlow and also taught John's son Ricardo for a little while. And this particular piece, A Quiet Night on the Roaring Fork, is programmatic. It was based on an evening when Michael and his wife were out walking, and they came to the place where they had previously scattered his wife's mother's ashes. And so this piece represents the sounds of nature and the mood on that particular evening.
evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight for our last concert of the season. I will start the program with two pieces by the Spanish composer Luis de Narvaez. The first one is based on the famous Mil Regrets, La Canción de Emperador, and it's a very sad and deep piece. And in contrast, my second piece that I will be playing is Diferencias on El Conde Claros, which is based on a Spanish ballad, and it's much more joyful and with lots of run-throughs and it's very live. following piece in my program will be by a composer who we don't know much actually, Franz Worth Miller. This was piece found by Tim Hopstock, and it was an arrangement, looked like to be an arrangement. Likely this piece was original for piano, and it's very much hiding niche in its format. It's a trio sonata, and the first movement is in A major. Second movement, it's in B flat, and third movement comes back in a rondo form in A major. you everyone for listening and enjoying us tonight. I'll be finishing the program with two Brazilian pieces. Two of my favorite Brazilian composers. One, Ginga, who is a prolific composer in Brazil, has composed many pieces for not only guitar, but also different types of ensembles. And this piece was a slow piece written during the 80s and written for his daughter, Senhorinha. And the second piece is by Marco Pereira. And Marco is one of the most important guitar composers in Brazil right now. He wrote this piece in a traditional Brazilian dance form called Baião. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you for everything, all the contributions, all the support that we have had. Thank you everyone again for joining tonight. We couldn't miss the opportunity of playing together, and we'll be playing Água e Vinho by one of our favorite composers, Egberto Gismonti. Thank you again.